Hello, I'm Amanda Roberts and I'm the founder of the Patients Changing Things Together, or PATCHATT community group. Thank you very much for the opportunity to share our story with you. Within this presentation, I'm going to introduce the PATCHATT initiative, explore how the principles of teacher-led development work methodology have influenced the development of PATCHATT, and explore how individuals with a life-limiting illness can develop as health activists. Finally, I'm going to share with you how we are using comics as catalysts for this health activism. So I'd like to begin by telling you a bit about the origins of the PATCHATT initiative. PATCHATT arose out of a response to the COVID pandemic. I was volunteering at a local hospice which wasn't able to continue to provide day therapy support for its patients. So to fill the gap until normal services could resume, I introduced an online support group. Conversations we had within this group revealed the way in which a serious illness can severely diminish people's sense of a positive sense of self and their own belief in their ability to act, to change anything. We realised that people needed not only a support group where they could share experiences, but a support group with a difference, one where they could help one another to make a difference to things which mattered to them. We therefore formed a working group of patients, carers, clinicians, researchers, academics, and volunteers who together developed the PATCHATT initiative. PATCHATT is an online facilitated peer support initiative for adults with a life-limiting illness. The aim of the PATCHATT initiative is to support those adults to make a difference to something which matters to them as individuals. We meet for 1 hour per week for 6 weeks, and group members share a small, doable change they wish to make to their lives, and we support them to plan and carry out the actions needed to bring this about. Participants are also supported to set up their own peer networks if they want to at the end of our 6 formal weeks together. I've been involved with HertsCam for many years and drew directly on the principles of the teacher-led development work methodology to develop PATCHATT. These can be summarised as moral purpose, agency and individual concerns, leading change through projects, support through facilitation in inclusive communities, reflection and dialogue in recurring workshops, knowledge building, and activism and advocacy. You'll see as we go through the presentation how these principles have influenced our work within PATCHATT. Like teachers, adults with a life-limiting illness often have really clear insights into how to improve their own quality of life and wider service effectiveness. Lots of literature supports the claim made by this patient activist here that people know what to do and are capable of doing it. However, general nervousness about patients' complex health issues often dispars them from project leadership roles. Changes to the healthcare context are beginning to provide new opportunities, though. For example, the new public health movement is shifting towards participative community approaches to supporting the sick. Within this broad community empowerment field, exploring social movements in health is really helpful in illuminating patients' leadership potential. Social movements in health draw on community or people power to promote or resist changes to healthcare provision, and they do this through innovative approaches to care and policy making. This approach is increasingly supported by public policy. For example, NHS England's 5-year forward view specifically specifies an ambition to build a social movement which shifts power to patients and citizens to improve health, well-being, community strength, and NHS capacity. The term social movement implies large-scale activity over time. However, the term health activism, denoting action taken within social movements, can be applied to the single action of individuals. Health activism's underlying principle is purposeful, morally driven action to bring about impactful change across the healthcare ecosystem. So exploring health activism helps us to set up the broad areas of change which might be led by adults with a life-limiting illness. However, the processes those individuals might use are less transparent, as is how they might develop as change agents. So I found Bronfenbrenner's work on ecological models of human development really helpful here. Bronfenbrenner proposes that human development relies on repeated interactions, which he calls proximal processes, between people and their environment, which he calls an ecosystem. His work suggests two areas of development are needed to support palliative care patient activism. The first is the development of individuals as leaders of change, and the second is the development of processes which these individuals can use to influence dominant systems, beliefs, values, and so on. So if we start with the development of patients as leaders, Bronfenbrenner proposes that successful development relies on a careful consideration of the elements of the ecosystem in which development is sought. For palliative care patients, this context or ecosystem might be understood as comprised as the microsystem, so that's the individual's home environment, the mesosystem, the individual and the healthcare organisations that support them, the exosystem, which is the wider healthcare services, and the macrosystem, which refers to the dominant patterns of societal beliefs and norms. So, developing patients into health activists who can influence across these ecosystem levels may seem a bit tricky. However, recent critiques of activism really emphasise the need to acknowledge the importance of small-scale individual change, rather than saying to be successful, you've got to be leading change across a system. So we encourage PATCHATT participants to engage with the intimate activism of trying to change things at family or micro level, in Bronfenbrenner's words, as well as influencing wider norms and discourse around dying and death. Turning to Bronfenbrenner's second area, the need for processes to support development, leads us to comics. Comics are used for various reasons in healthcare, as shown on this slide, but grassroots comics in particular teach us a lot about how to support palliative care patients as health activists. So they came out of Pakalin and Sharma's work in India, and people create grassroots comics to express their views, beliefs and feelings about issues that are important to them. The completed comics are photocopied, pasted up locally, and give everyone who can access a pencil and paper the opportunity to influence change. So within PATCHATT, we use what we term catalyst comics to fulfil this storytelling and activating role. As PATCHATT facilitators, we produce these catalyst comics and share them with the participants as a call to action. PATCHATT comics tell the stories of how 3 adults with life-limiting illnesses develop as change makers. I'm going to share Nita's comics with you to illustrate how they might catalyse change. Nita's comic is in 3 parts and is shared with group participants across 3 PATCHATT sessions. In part 1, Nita shares her story, the problem she's currently facing, which she wishes to take action to overcome. Humans have always told stories to help us understand the nature of the world and how we fit with it. This becomes particularly important when we become ill. Storytelling allows us to surface our values and share our experience in order to make sense of it. Nita's story focuses on the difficulties and frustrations she experiences through having to repeat basic information about her illness to numerous healthcare providers. She is presented as lacking any agency within the healthcare system, and the comic panels illustrate the physical and psychological impact of her problem. However, like those undertaking teacher-led development work, Nita does not waste time criticising the healthcare system, but focuses instead on finding a solution. The comic format of Nita's story allows PATCHATT participants easy access to her experience and allows them to relate it to their own. The combination of pictures and text supports this sense of association with a recognisable issue. In sharing her issue, Nita capitalises on humans' need for affinity and group membership. Telling her unique story is the first step both in securing support to solve her problem and in engendering feelings of mutuality within the PATCHATT group, the inclusive community referred to in the teacher-led development work methodology principles. The group's ability to recognise and empathise with Nita is fundamental to her developing an activist approach to change. In part 2, Nita draws more overtly on the experience of the PATCHATT community to develop a plan of action to address her problem. The panels clearly illustrate the reciprocity at the centre of storytelling, with group members offering encouragement and practical suggestions. Nita responds positively in the third panel, adopting the listening and responding roles implicit in storytelling and encouraging group members to continue to engage with her problem. Nita has drawn attention to an issue which makes her life more difficult. This might be deemed an example of health advocacy. However, with the help of fellow group members, she begins to formulate a way forward. Such plans move Nita beyond advocacy and towards becoming a health activist, taking action herself to bring about change. Nita's problem and her fellow group members' proposed solutions could also be seen as a counter-story, challenging normative thinking and practices. This counter-story persuades Nita within the panels of her latent change leadership potential. It also persuades the reader outside of the panels of their own capacity to make a difference. Activism becomes self-perpetuating. Part 3 of Nita's comic, we see the positive influence Nita's activism has had on her state of mind. Her reference in the second panel of this final comic to being treated more like an individual now is particularly important. Nita appears to have recognised that taking constructive action allows her to develop some agency in her encounters with healthcare professionals, leading to her feeling more like herself. Nita also has the potential to make positive changes at system level. She is working within the system rather than outside of it, using her experiential knowledge to effect reform. Although she has not directly influenced system-level processes, her "This is my story" sheet may well be circulated by her healthcare professionals and developed further. In offering solutions to a common healthcare problem, Nita and her PATCHATT friends have attempted to democratise knowledge production and dissemination for both their own and system gain. So within PATCHATT, as within teacher-led development work, we seek to challenge dominant discourse and practice. Moral purpose is crucial here. In both HertsCam and PATCHATT, individuals are driven by moral purpose to question the status quo and measure it against their own values, to challenge the inequalities between system and individual in order to make a difference to something which matters to them. Yalom's concept of rippling suggests that, without knowing it, we are creating concentric circles of influence. Things we do enrich others, and they pass this enrichment on. Nita's comment in the third panel of her final comic that this is a step in the right direction acknowledges that we can't know the full extent of our actions' impact. The importance of principles is that they allow us to be explicit about our beliefs and views of how things happen. In this case, the HertsCam principles have led to the development of a programme for supporting patients with a life-limiting illness to lead change and to restore a sense of positive identity. We've exemplified what these principles might look like in the PATCHATT initiative to enable us to share them more widely and also to ensure that we continue to use them to underpin our work. We hope this presentation has been interesting, and we also hope it has stimulated you to consider the principles which underpin your own practice.